Maybe I'm crazy, maybe I'm crazy, maybe I'm not.
Very happy to have Greg Jennings on the podcast. Greg, you are in Minneapolis, if I am correct, right?
Yes,
even though I'm
in Minneapolis.
You got a bunch of Packer stuff behind you, so you may be confused. I think that he is in Green Bay. But you live in Minneapolis, so you've been not only in the middle, in the center of everything that's been happening, but also your family is there with you, and your wife is a small business owner in Minneapolis as well, right?
Exactly. We've been in the thick of it, in the center of it, around it, and supporting it all.
So how are you guys mentally and emotionally? I mean, we were talking before we started, this is a reality every day, regardless of whether this is national news or not. But obviously, like I said, you guys are in the center of, the attention of the whole universe, being that's where Greg Floyd was murdered, and there are protests, and it's gotten very intense there. So how are you guys doing?
We're doing good. Taking each day, one day at a time. And I know that sounds cliche, but that is the reality. Every day kind of brings about a different level of emotion, depending on what triggers you, what you see in social, what's going on in the world around you, what's going on downtown here locally, and just what you hear and the responses of people reacting to what's going on around our nation. It's truly one of those deals that is day by day.
So a lot of the reactions to what's happening that I'm getting, and I won't say that it's most, but it is enough that it's disturbing, is that the protests are happening, and along with protests generally comes some violence and some looting. And as I mentioned, your wife's a small business owner in Minneapolis. To me, it's a redirect to constantly talk about the rioting and the looting, or to bring that up first before mentioning that you support the protests and that you understand what's happening. But you are somebody who could be directly affected by that looting and rioting. So how do you feel about just the reaction to that and just that conversation as a whole?
It's a culmination of feelings. But ultimately, my wife and I, we support it 100%. Do we condone it all? No, but we truly understand why. Like, people are tired. The Black community is tired of being overlooked, unheard, and they are showcasing their emotion, their hurt, their pain, their frustration in ways that is misunderstood at times, because one who hasn't gone through the oppression, the adversities that they have gone through as the Black community. And I say they, I'm included in that. That's how I grew up. And it's one of those things where I was talking to an individual yesterday, and as an outsider, you really just have to listen. You can't really, it's nothing you can really say unless you're trying to resolve the issue, unless you're putting kind of your action behind your words of how can I help? And you start helping. Anytime you hear in the media, when they come out first and say the looting and the rioting and all of these things that play to the heartstrings of those who are completely against the looting and the rioting, it's what you said. It's shifting and redirecting what is really the causation of it all. And that is the police brutality, the social injustices that we as a people have endured for hundreds of years. And whatever that looks like for us as individuals, it comes in different styles, different forms, different ways. It's presented to us all differently, but we all have a story. We all have our experience in some fashion. And I think if we really look beyond the destruction of what's taking place and what has happened, and look at why things are being destructed, the destruction was happening far beyond and prior to what we're seeing as a manifestation of actual buildings being burned and damaged and looted. The destruction was already happening. It just was happening in a way that was masked and protected and overlooked.
So I've been tossing around, we're all thinking, right, of solutions and ways to move forward or ways to educate. And I think, and this is not every or all, obviously, but I do think that there is a significant part of the American population who their only interaction with the Black community is athletes or stars or, maybe somebody in their office, but they don't have personal relationships with people in the Black community. So when they hear things like this, they think that, well, it's Greg Jennings. He's a superstar athlete. He's got a Super Bowl. He's got money. He's just carrying on a narrative or doing what's popular. He doesn't really relate to what's actually happening. And there's layers to what I just said. I know you understand what I'm saying, but when you were on the show with us, I think it was last week or the week before, you were talking about going down to the protest with your daughters. And I'm not going to lie, I almost cried when you were talking about how you had to talk to your daughters about, how people might be afraid of you and what that all means. And I think those conversations are conversations that white families don't have to have with their kids because it's just so far removed from their reality. So how do you communicate like how much this affects you? Like the fact that you're an athlete, because I'm getting that, like, oh, like this isn't part of your reality. Like how, first of all, you don't know me. So you don't know anything about what I've experienced, and nor do you have to be a part of something to be empathetic, but we are a part of this. So how did you articulate that to your daughters, and how do you speak to somebody who's that far removed from our reality?
Well, I think for all involved, whether it be my neighbors who are predominantly white, my daughters, or anyone who I may encounter, I literally have to strip back this immortal veil that they think we wear as athletes that has put us in a position of untouchable. Like we're the exception. Like we are not the exception. And I think when I tell my daughters, because they look at me, anytime you're a parent, and specifically fathers, when you're involved in your kid's life, they think that you can do any and everything. They think you're the strongest man in the world. They see you as literally their superhero, their Superman. And I just remember walking and I'm telling my daughters, I was trying to think like strategically, how do I say this? I mean, I paused a couple times and they're like, my wife and the girls are like, no, just say it, Daddy. And I'm like, you know what? That's it. We just have to say it. And I have to tell them, like, look, I know you guys think Daddy is great and Daddy is all these various good things, but that's not how the world views Daddy. It's specifically the world that doesn't look like us. White America doesn't view Daddy like that. If you guys pay attention, while we're walking down the street, how people look at me versus how they even look at you as Black young ladies, it's different. I pose an extreme threat. And to be honest, Joy, like me saying that to them, watching them respond, they were shocked. They were like, really? And as I'm saying it, the more I'm saying it, the more I realize that I've never really said this out loud. And this hurts. Like, because I know me, like you know me. They know me. My neighbors know me. And it's like, but still there's something about me that presents a threat to someone, and they haven't even considered really getting to know why they're even afraid. Like what is it about me that makes you so afraid? Or even, and I've had individuals say, well, it's not that we're afraid. Well, it's your guard. You immediately become guarded. You like literally, it's like, as a black man, as black individuals, as people of color, we answer the phone trying to almost turn off or desensitize whoever it is on the other end, just to disarm them, to where our voice inflection changes. So they don't think that they're talking to some uneducated, the perception that is out there of uneducated black person. And it's like you change your voice, you answer your door, hi, how, in your own home. These things are things that we do to appease, if you will, but not to conform. But it's like we're always thinking about how can we present ourselves in a way, in a fashion, to where we're disarming the narrative that precedes us, that goes before us. That is like, it's, for me, I'm like, how did I get just thrown into that category? When in life, you encounter anyone in life and they hate being pulled and thrown into a category with anyone that doesn't fit them. But yet you do that to me every single day. I drive down my own neighborhood, been living in the same neighborhood for almost 7 years, and some neighbors will wave, some don't. If I'm walking, some neighbors will wave, some won't. And it's just hard to explain that to your kids, because all they see is the positive. They don't see the racism. They don't see the divide, if you will, of, oh, they think that we're different. They don't even pay attention to all of that. And so as a parent, you just try to educate them by just literally telling them exactly how it is. And that's just how you get it. You just tell them exactly how it is. We actually, my neighbor, I have a Black Lives Matter flag in my yard, and I purposely waited to take it out there when majority of my neighbors were outside, to see if anyone would even be willing to address it. And one of my neighbors did. She walked right across the street and she started talking, and she's expressing what she needs to do to unlearn some things and to listen. And so we're tomorrow having a neighborhood come together of conversation on, so they can just listen. So they can just listen. And I think that's where it starts. And when people say that they want to listen and they lend an ear, you just have to be honest. Like, you can't tiptoe. You just have to tell them exactly how it is. Not to scare anyone, not to make them feel like they're a part of the problem, because they very well may not be. But you have to address it for what it is, so we can all identify, okay, this is what it is, period. Like, people are saying Black Lives, we're all having this issue, or I shouldn't say we're all, but those who aren't Black have this issue with the fact that we say Black Lives Matter. And the reality is, Joy, that why would someone have to even say Black Lives Matter if they didn't feel that way? Like, you wouldn't say something unless you felt that way about it. Like, no one walks around saying white lives matter. Why? Because they know it. They don't feel like their lives don't matter.
Right.
But when you feel slighted, when you feel like you've been the one that has been on the short end of everything, or you haven't been given the same opportunities, you at some point have to speak up for yourself. And I think that's what needs to take place. And when you have the opportunity to speak up, speak truth and speak from the heart and speak honesty.
Yeah, I think that's great that you're doing that with your neighbors. I think obviously the movement overall internationally and you know the big crowds and everything is super important. But I also really believe it starts at the grassroots level, if you will, just those hard conversations with people that are close to you. And someone who has been in the news a lot over this past week because maybe he didn't listen so much was Drew Brees. And I mean, I don't know what your initial reaction to it was, but I really felt hurt. And not everything that's being said right now, even if it's meant to be hurtful or not meant to be hurtful, does hurt me. But Drew Brees' comments really upset me because I hold Drew Brees in a different category. I respect him, and I think he's a legacy quarterback in this league, and I think he's done a lot for the community in New Orleans and a lot for the community throughout Corona. So it really threw me off that he would say something so past tone deaf. It really just was like hurtful. Like it was so just a throwaway comment. And what bothers me about it is so many people are reacting to it and saying like, you know, don't crush Drew. And this is just my opinion on it. Aside from the fact that I felt like it was a careless and hurtful thing to say. What people don't understand is right now, if you're on the other side, if you're on the, you know, the first thing that you mentioned is looting and rioting side, if you're on the side of all lives matter, or you're pushing against everything that's happening, all you need is one little crumb from someone to validate your, you know, opinion about what's happening. And that catches fire. And then you can't talk. It's just one more step away from where we're trying to get. And when you are in a position like Drew Brees, you have a responsibility not to feed that dragon, which is another reason why it was so hurtful to me. But he did apologize. I'll be honest, I'm not over it yet. I do think his teammates will forgive him and move forward. And I do think he is probably now having really tough conversations. But what was your reaction to all that?
So my initial reaction was wow. Like there was a level of callousness that I thought Drew showcased, and selfishness, and I know Drew. I have a relationship with Drew. It's not to a teammate level, but and to your point, like when you have watched someone live a life and of action the way that Drew has, philanthropically, when it comes to supporting of Katrina and COVID and just all the many various things that he's done has been so positive that can't be thrown away. But in such a sensitive moment in time, it's I liken it to when we're all getting interviewed after the game and you know we come in to the locker room and the coach says, look, this is our message. We lost. Let's just take it. It is what it is. Give the other team credit. No matter and regardless the question, your response always goes back to, you know, they deserve to win, or they were the better team, or you just own it. Basically, you just give them praise. You acknowledge it. You don't try to make it about what you think it's about. This is not the time. You know that. And so with knowing that, how we've been trained to do this by PR teams, by teammates, by our peers, and for Drew to not do it, it just, in my opinion, that's the first thing that came to my mind is like, wow, that's just callous. Like, that's just dismissing what is really hurting, what is really causing, what is really the deep issue here. It's just like, you know what? I don't really care at this moment. And that's just how it came off to me. Knowing Drew and knowing his action, I know it hurts to see people lashing out and the backlash that he's received. And I truly believe that he is apologetic. I do. But you have to understand, and you said it, in a moment like this, you have to be able to discern like what you say, how you say, why you say, and when you say. And right now, in this moment, every question, if you are against social injustice and police brutality, and you are in support of the protesting and making things right in America, that should have been your message. Because if we don't unify that message, anything else that we say is going to be plastered. The one thing that you say that is not in agreement with bettering the cause or making change or progressing what we're trying to get done, it's going to be detracted, and that's what's going to be put out there. He knows that better than anyone, and that's what was so hurtful. And as far as the apology, I accept the apology. I think his teammates are going to accept the apology. But when you have someone, like you said, like Drew Brees, in that community who has done so much, the way I look at it also is you're on the side that we want to not necessarily want to be on, but we just want to get to that level of equality. So you understand, you have an inside track of what we deal with by the relationships that you formed in the locker rooms, the conversations that I know you've had, and you're our closest ally. You're literally the one individual that can connect and that can be a voice of influence to those who we are trying to influence, but they are not listening to us, but they will listen to you, Drew. So the moment you don't do it, it's like, really? You too? It was just very hurtful.
So Roger Goodell put out a statement, which felt like it was a reaction to Saquon and a lot of other guys from around the NFL putting a video out, basically calling out the NFL. I thought that the statement that Roger Goodell made was a good statement. Obviously, it could have been made sooner and without being prompted. But what was your reaction to Roger Goodell's statement?
I thought it was a good statement. I thought it was needed. And as much as I can poke holes in it, I appreciate him and applaud him for making the statement. I do, because he could have chosen not to. He could have chosen to be silent. He could have chosen to wait it out and see how everything pans out and then release a statement. But the fact that he chose to just make a statement and say the things that he said, and saying that he's against police brutality and in support of advancing the causes of our black athletes and our players in the league and what they're standing for, it was needed. It was needed on so many levels, specifically the level of you have a lot of black coaches, you have a lot of black assistant coaches, you have a lot of black players, you have so many that you are representing that you can speak for. And if you choose not to say anything in this moment, you're basically saying everything we need to hear. And I think that the fact that he chose to stand up and to say something is a sign that, you know what, he does at the very least care enough to give a statement. Now, as far as putting action behind that statement, that's to be seen. We have to see that happen.
So some feel that a proper response to Goodell's statement would be to bring Kaepernick back into the league. I think that generally sweeping statements about bringing Kaepernick back kind of remove the reality of what the league actually is and how it works. Do I think that Kaepernick should have gotten a job when he was a free agent? Yes. Do I think that he was blackballed? Yes. Do I think that he is good enough to be a backup quarterback in this league? Yes. I mean, we've seen the guys that they've dragged off the couch into the league, so it's impossible to argue against that. But do you think that that is the next step for what needs to happen in order for Goodell's statement to be validated?
I think that would be a huge step if they were being strategic and they wanted to just for the sake of it, let's save face. That would be their first move. That would be their first move. To ensure that Colin Kaepernick has a job moving forward in the National Football League on one of the 32 teams. Now, him playing would then be the next issue. Well, he should be playing, and I think you would have to address that as proper protocol moving forward. But if they were trying to be strategic and smart about it, I think that would be a smart move to show that, you know what, we did mishandle this situation, and say that upon doing it. Don't just bring them back and expect everybody to be okay with that.
Right.
Bring him back and acknowledge the fact that what was done to Colin Kaepernick was wrong, and own it. Like the league, and this is what I don't understand. Like, the league isn't going to be hurt by someone stating the truth and just saying, you know what, Roger Goodell specifically just owning it. You know what?
If anything, I think it will help, because
exactly
it's going to remove the animosity that surrounds him not being in the league. And I don't think it puts any blame on anybody to do that, but I agree. Like, I don't understand this mentality, and it's like a societal issue that you just get dug in on your particular stance, and it's like a badge of honor.
You refuse to move
off of that. Like, that's not cute. Who told you that was cute? It's not cute. It's unattractive. Like, it's not a good quality to be rigid. That's not fun. It's not going to make you grow. And I understand people don't really care about that, but if you have any expectation of, like, the world not passing you by, how can that be how you handle things?
Yeah, it can't be. And I think that would show the ultimate sign of growth and support, not only for Colin Kaepernick, but for our black players moving forward. That, you know what? Yeah, it might have been a PR move if they decide to bring Colin Kaepernick back. But when somebody stands up and takes responsibility for something that has been deemed wrong, then it's like, what can I say to that? If Roger Goodell says, you know what, this was wrong, and I know there's nothing we can do about what has happened, the time that has been lost, we can't give that back to Colin Kaepernick, but we can make it right moving from this date forward. What can we say? What can we say?
Well, like, I mean, there will still be people who are angry about the time, and that's fair, and that's completely warranted. But yeah, I agree with you. I think that, you know, a team signing him, whether he starts or not or any of that, like that should be up to the team and competition to, you know, and how he's going to play after these 4 years, we don't know. But I agree with you. The statement of the way he was handled was wrong, and accepting, you know, whatever responsibility comes with that, because we all know it was wrong, right? Like, it's not like a debate. Well, it is a debate to some people, but overall, like, especially with what's happening now, like, you can't be out protesting in the street and then still argue that what Kaepernick did was wrong. Like, you're missing the point here, if that's the case. So yeah, I think a statement and him getting on a team would be a massive step forward for the league in response to all this. Finally, before I let you go, there was kind of a really massive step made in Minneapolis regarding the police department. They're kind of shifting towards a new style of policing with a public safety initiative. What do you think is the next step with all of this? Like, obviously the protesting is going to continue, the conversations are going to continue, but what would you change immediately? Like, what's the next step that you would take?
To be honest, I think there needs to be another entity, an outside entity that polices the police. That oversees that.
I just said that yesterday. I mean, I've been saying that. We all been saying that, but yes.
So it's kind of like, let's go back to football. When we talk about the concussion protocol, players they're gonna want to play, and team doctors are, let's just face it, their loyalty lies with the team, and so they're going to be more subject to allowing that player to convince them to get back on the field versus the health period of the player, of the individual, because there's no they have some skin in the game. Let's just call a spade a spade. They have some skin in the game. And so by bringing in an outside source, a neurologist that has no skin in the game, all they solely care about is the well-being of an individual and whether they can pass that concussion protocol test or not. If they don't touch that field again. If they do, okay. That's what needs to happen when it comes to law enforcement. There needs to be some other entity that they have to then report to that sees and overlooks everything that they do, that assesses everything that they do, that checks every box that they check. A police report being reported by the police, that's like only listening to one side of the story from two individuals and you only take one person's take. Like, okay, so what did you say? And you don't even consider the other person because they are not in a position of authority or influence. They're deemed to be wrong. So you're not going to really listen to them fairly. And I think in order for that to be eliminated and completely dismissed, if you bring in an outside entity that oversees what the law enforcement is doing and their procedures and protocols and their policies, I think it would get remedied a lot quicker than what we would even think that it should be. It's in my mind, and I believe in it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I don't know how that's not already happened, but it's the same argument that I make for whenever the NFL makes decisions about suspensions. Like, in order to eliminate Roger Goodell getting blamed for everything, why wouldn't you have a committee of people, a committee that can be voted on by the NFL Players Association, can change, a diverse committee of people, men, women from different places in the world, different occupations, can evaluate independently the situation and then make their recommendation. Like that removes a level of bias, and it makes the public feel more comfortable with what's happening. Like, why not make that committee be committee members that you can vote on? Then make it a diverse committee that changes every 2 years, so it's not somebody locked into this position that can be bought off or any of those things. And they don't make the end all be all decision. They recommend it to the DA, and the DA makes the decision from that point forward. But there needs to be another layer of evaluation. Cops are going to be much more inclined to stay calm in situations and not use excessive force if they know there's a very good chance this committee is going to see what I did and not only fire me so I lose my job, but then recommend that I be prosecuted for it. There's no fear of that right now, just none. I mean, the man who killed George Floyd had 12 excessive force complaints against him. How does that happen? This was a full steam ahead train towards this outcome, and it was avoidable. And I totally agree. So let's push that forward. I'm gonna clip this off and put that out because I totally agree. Well, thanks for your time, Greg. I hope that you guys are mentally and emotionally taking care of yourselves, because this is, it's a wave of emotion, everything that's happening on top of it being a very good thing and having good momentum. So take care of yourself. It was good to talk to you, and hopefully we'll see you back in studio soon.
Absolutely. Take care.
You too. Okay.